Ooh, ooh, ooh. Okay, it's our scary Halloween special. And this year, we are going to talk about mummies on this episode of Ancient Egypt and the Bible. Every year, we try to do a Halloween special. And this year, my producer pointed out that we've never done a video on mummies. So today, we are going to talk about the desiccated dead. Now, the concept behind mummies is really simple. The body of a dead person is desiccated of water or preserved in an environment so that the flesh does not rot away. And there are mummies found all over the world. They are found in the Andes, in bogs in Europe, and even among Buddhist monk burials in Japan. But no one raised mummification to as high an art as is found in Egypt. Mummification in Egypt began as simple burials. In the pre dynastic period, the dead were buried in simple pangraves in the sand, and it was soon discovered that the dry sand made natural mummies. In the Old Kingdom, mummification became an intentional process. While we have evidence that mummification was being done during Dynasty 5, the details of that process remain to be discovered. So, we've got knowledge that already in the Old Kingdom, mummification was being done, but we're not sure exactly how it was being done. And it's not until the New Kingdom that the funerary arts reach their peak, the zenith of this technique taking place during the 21st dynasty. So, with that background, we're going to get into the details of how mummification was done. However, warning, this is not for the people with weak stomachs, okay? So, we're going to get into the nitty gritty of mummification. Now, of course, the first thing you're going to need is a dead body. Basically, what they did was they were going to set up a tent, and inside the tent, they're going to place a mummification table. And the deceased is going to be placed on that mummification table for the process. The body is washed on the outside, and an incision is made along the body cavity. The heart, lungs, liver, and intestines are removed and are placed in 4 canopic jars. After the organs are removed, the body is then washed again inside and out. Now we're going to talk about a somewhat controversial topic, the removal of the brain. A generation ago, it was thought that the brain was always removed, basically with a tool that went up the nose, sort of scrambled and imported out. But we now know with magnetic resonance imaging, the brain was not always removed. And when not removed, the mummification process caused the brain to shrivel so that it becomes a thin film that adhered to the inside of the skull. This is why the presence of the brain in mummies escaped the notice of forensic archaeologists for so long. But this is by no means the end of the process. Within 48 to 72 hours after death and the initial preparation of the mummy, the body started to undergo a process called marbling. Marbling causes the skin of the deceased to turn a greenish black. And then the body starts to expel fluids as putrefaction sets in. These fluids are generally referred to as purge fluids. And for the next 40 days, the entire body is covered in natron. Natron is a naturally occurring salt, and it's used to salt the flesh, causing it to dehydrate. And over those 40 days, priests check the natron. They will remove and replace any natron that has been soaked with purge fluids and replace it with fresh natron. Now, after the end of that 40 days, the natron is removed and the body is wrapped. Following the wrapping, 30 days of mourning begins. Now, that's sort of the general process of mummification. But in the 21st dynasty, extra cosmetic treatments were often done to the mummy before wrapping. The body could be stuffed with sawdust. They would sometimes make fake eyes made of gemstones, which would be placed over the eye sockets. Wigs and prosthetic limbs could be sewn on, and the entire mummy could be covered in gold foil. So that sort of represents sort of the zenith, the height of mummification, where they did all these extra techniques on top of mummification. So the mummies of the 21st dynasty were really treated to extraordinary processes. And it's quite interesting. So then, with all that labor put into mummies, why did the Egyptians go through the trouble of mummifying people? It stems from the belief that the state of the body reflects into the state of the soul into the afterlife. If one's body is incomplete going into the tomb, the soul would also be incomplete in the afterlife. In general, it was believed that the soul was in a liminal state, where it was vulnerable to predation by demonic powers, by the god Sutek, until it went through a process called apotheosis, where the soul of the human being received a new body that was made of, say, gold and iron. And at that point, it achieved a kind of invulnerability. And furthermore, after achieving apotheosis, the mummy could serve as a proxy body, where the spirit of the dead could return to the land of the living to receive food and drink offerings. Because it was sort of believed that a spirit that did not receive offerings could suffer from starvation. Because it was believed that the only source of food for the afterlife was from the living. So it was an important part of Egyptian religion that the spirits received offerings into the afterlife. Now, there is a kind of logic to this, that a mummy could serve as a body for a dead spirit. After all, the living body was the vessel of the spirit before death, and if properly preserved, could serve as a proxy body in the next life. So anyway, I hope you found that interesting. Thank you very much for watching, and we'll see you next time on Ancient Egypt and the Bible.